99, before everybody say, oh, man, JaMychal's post, it motivated LeBron James. Like, LeBron James is going to come out and play that way because it's a closeout Game 6 at home, and he knows going back to Game 7 and Chase Center like that, you just don't want to do that. Like, how can you do that? So the force that he came out playing with, LeBron James, I highly doubt is being moved by someone posting a blue cap on his head on Instagram story. Like, and I know that's the media, that's the media thing, sports media. You just don't poke the, like, stop it. Ain't no poking no bear at this point in the season. Like, you try and win. You win or you lose. And you're coming out to do that regardless. So before everyone run off like, oh, JaMychal, you caused this, stop it. And saying that, as the series went on, I know you all remember me speaking earlier, like, yo, Bron off the ball. As the series went on, you see he got on that ball more and more and more and more and more. And it was more of what we were accustomed to seeing from Bron. I thought it said a lot about him to try taking a different route, a different path, doing a different thing for this team. Start this series, and then he ultimately went back to, I'm going to control everything. I want to get us into the actions that we want to get into. I'm going to get the game at the pace that we wanted at. And he ultimately went back to that, and which was more of what, like I said, what we're accustomed to seeing. And I think he did what the game dictated. AD 17-20, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Man, I always enjoy competing against some of the best. AD is one of the best in the game, one of the most talented players we got in this league, one of the most gifted guys, special talent. Obviously, we came in together. It's been 11 years in this thing, and the battles that we've had. This isn't our first playoff battle. I doubt if it's the last playoff battle, but the battles we've had over the course of these last 11 years has been amazing. I always enjoy playing against the guys that challenge me to be at my best. And if you're not at your best, it's not good enough. And I wasn't at my best enough this series for it to be good enough. Tip my hat to AD as a competitor. It's a guy who takes a lot of slander. And, he stepped up to the challenge. He's changed their season. And they're headed to the conference finals, and he's right at the center of all of that. So I take my hat off to him. Austin Reeves, man, a guy who got off to a slow start in this series, finished with 23, and I think for the last 4 games maybe, he played well. He earned my respect. Definitely earned my respect. He's just competing at the level that he competed at throughout these series. These lights get bright. We've seen guys, these playoffs, say these lights get bright, too bright. And they get too bright for a lot of people. Tip my hat to him on how he stood. And like I said, it didn't start off great. And that's a guy who's up for a contract. You start talking about, you start struggling in the series. You lose that series all of a sudden. Like, what is the future? Like, are you the guy? Are you here? All of those things. And, like, for the series to not start off great for him and for him to stick with it and have the impact that he had on the series said a lot to me. Said a lot. Like I said, you see so many guys that just shrink in these moments and don't live up to the moment. And if I'm not mistaken, this is his first time playing it at this level, as far as the playoffs and, making runs, and looked like he fit right in. So I take my hat off to him. Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder was a huge key to this series for them. I thought the adjustment to add him to the starting lineup would have came earlier, but you also don't really make adjustments like that when you're not faced with elimination, essentially. Now, again, remember I said, you see that type of adjustment in Game 6. That is because they're essentially approaching that like an elimination game. Like, we got to go back for Game 7. It's just a coin flip. You just, like, you don't want that. And so they go to Dennis Schroeder in the starting lineup, like I said, which is one that I thought could have happened earlier. And Dennis had been great for them the whole series. He had been great defensively. Didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but shot it okay, well enough. Hit timely shots. I wouldn't even necessarily say it was the amount of shots he hit, but he hit timely shots all series. We'd be on a run. He'd get to the middle of the paint, hit a little floater. Hit a couple threes, like timely. Much respect to him as a competitor. Obviously, we had our jawing back and forth in the series, and I enjoy that. Don't take stuff that happens on the court personal. He changed that series for them. He changed the series for them. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in free agency this summer. Because if he doesn't get a nice contract, it's because people. So in all of this stuff, when you're talking social media and like it's everyday thing, people like create these perceptions. And so when you there's a perception that's been created on Dennis due to the contract that he didn't take with the Lakers before. And like that perception lives in people's head. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we can get this guy for cheap now. We don't have to pay this guy. And like he's played well above what he's making. Well above what he's making. And shown to be an important piece to a possibly championship contending team. A very important piece. Almost their starting point guard. Like, you got D'Lo obviously start at the point. But when Dennis is in the game, D'Lo plays off the ball most of the time. And Dennis is playing 30-plus minutes in these playoffs. And so he's almost like their starting point guard. Whenever anything's going wrong, he's who they're inserting. And so Dennis was a huge key to this series. And I tip my hat to him as well. And ultimately, like I said, tipping my hat to all of those guys. They were the better team in this series. And they're moving on with a matchup versus the Denver Nuggets. We will get into that before we get out of here. I'll go back to that. Just moving forward, thoughts on the future of the Warriors. I know, like I mentioned earlier, Steve said, like, this team maxed out. And I said this thing isn't maxed out, but this team was maxed out. Like, I can 100% agree with that, as I said earlier. But when I said this thing isn't maxed out, what I mean, like, we've been rolling. We've been doing this now. I've been here 11 years. We've been rolling for 9. And that ain't over. Like I always say, I'm riding out with the same guys I rode in with. And what I know about those guys that I rode in with, still a lot left in the tank. It's still a lot of winning on the, ahead of us. I was talking to Clay as we were sitting at the table last night. Ty, Clay, Steph, and myself, just like how important and big of a summer this is. Like how like locking in, like how locked in we need to be. Like, yeah, no, I don't think this is it. I'll say it right here for you. No, this isn't it. We plan on doing this thing again. That's the plan. Obviously, this is a business and things has to take place. I get that. But we plan on doing this again, but was just sitting there at the table stressing the importance of like us coming in shape and like being ready to go and like getting our bodies to the best space that you can get your body and like how big of a year this is for us next year. And the first thing he said, hell yeah. Like I still want to be an all-star again. I still want to win more. Like I want to do all of these things again. Like, and last summer for me, it just wasn't like that's my first summer in 2.5 years, a different summer, but I'm ready to attack this summer. And like that was great. Number one, to just be able to sit there and have that conversation. Like so many people aren't open to that conversation, and to know that we can still have those conversations after 11 years. You always talk about like bands breaking up and like this thing get too big and that thing get too big. And like to still have those conversations 11 years later, that's why we win. And that's why we will win again. Because it's not just about one guy. It's not you can't say this to me or I can't say this to you. Like, nah. It's a brotherhood when it's really that. And so looking forward to this summer. It's going to be a great summer for us. And it'll be a great year for us next year. And so that's what I meant on this thing isn't maxed out. Although that team was maxed out. Like we got all we can get out the team. Sucks that it did not finish the way you ultimately wanted to finish. Another thing Clay said I thought was interesting was like, man, I was looking at the Spurs and like what they were able to do. They never won back-to-back championships. Like, yeah, it's true. It's like, man, so like we still got more to do. Like, absolutely. It's hard to win back-to-back championships. Ultimately, your team has to get better to win back-to-back championships. I'm not sure this team got better. I'm not sure this was a better team. I know it wasn't. This wasn't a better team than we had last year. So that's the case. In saying that, as a competitor, you do all that you can to try to make it happen and win. And I think we did that. Like I said, like Steve said, it maxed out. It's okay.